After AEW All Out 2022, there was a media scrum where some of the wrestlers got on stage with Tony Khan, the owner of AEW, and they answered questions from journalists. One of the wrestlers was the heavyweight champion of the world in AEW, CM Punk. When I saw this scrum live, I thought this was one of the funniest, most entertaining things that AEW has ever done. When he was talking, it became clear that this was not a work because Tony Khan was responding very nervously to what was going on. And he was saying some things that I know the other talent wouldn't be cool with. But man, was it so intense, so entertaining. And I knew it would get a lot of attention put on AEW, which in one way is a good thing. However, this incident led to a physical confrontation after the scrum was over, and we haven't seen CM Punk since. So CM Punk gets up on the stage with Tony Khan. CM Punk is covered in blood from his match with Jon Moxley, where he had just won the World Championship. And the first question comes from a journalist named Nick Hausman. And CM Punk purposely confronts Nick Hausman, trying to ask him, hey, who did you used to do improv with? Because I guess he's trying to catch Nick Hausman in some kind of a journalistic integrity issue because he thinks Nick Hausman is friends with Colt Cabana. But Nick Hausman informed CM Punk that actually, no, he's not friends with Colt Cabana anymore, even though he used to do improv with him. And so CM Punk is a little surprised by that. And then he starts going on a rant about Colt Cabana, whose real name is Scott Colton. But the funniest thing about it, CM Punk is like, I can't believe I have to get up here on my time and talk about Colt Cabana. But the funny thing is nobody asked him about Colt Cabana. Nobody asked him about Scott Colton or anything like that. But man, that's how he starts this press conference, which tells you that he came up here wanting to talk about this and maybe some other stuff. And, it's been reported in some places that for a while he had been planning to say something during this press conference, which makes me worried about CM Punk's mental health. Because honestly, sometimes some of the stuff he says and does in public feels like he has some unresolved psychological things going on. And I don't want to make fun of him, but boy, it makes for some entertaining TV, I'll tell you that much. It's like, have you ever seen that movie Network, where they put a guy who's obviously has some mental issues, but they put him on TV because it gets all these ratings, because he's saying all this stuff that really resonates with the audience? That's kind of similar to what happened here. Now, as CM Punk is talking about Colt Cabana, you should see the look on Tony Khan's face. I mean, he's just staring blankly, and he has a faraway look in his eyes, like, I don't know why this guy's talking about Colt Cabana. And this is just the beginning, because CM Punk goes into further detail about other employees just as badly as he went in on Colt Cabana. Now, he starts talking about the whole legal issues between himself, Colt Cabana, and one of those doctors from the WWE. Because many years ago, Colt Cabana and CM Punk did a podcast after CM Punk walked out of the WWE. And one of the things Punk mentioned was that the medical staff at WWE didn't diagnose his physical ailments correctly, or they didn't do anything about them, etc. That's what he claims. And then they had a whole legal thing because the doctor sued Punk and Cabana. Then they asked Cabana to take the podcast down. Punk told him to keep it up because he has a lawyer and he'll take care of the whole thing. And I don't know what happened, but eventually Colt Cabana and Punk had a falling out over money, apparently. And then I think Colt Cabana tried to sue Punk. And but I thought this issue was taken care of years ago, but apparently this is still fresh in Punk's mind. I don't know if it was mentioned by somebody somewhere about something. I know there was rumors that people thought that Punk had something to do with Cabana being pushed to Ring of Honor instead of staying in AEW. And who knows what the truth is behind that. CM Punk says one thing, other people say another thing. But man, this is a heck of a start to a press conference after a successful pay-per-view where Punk just won the World Championship. And he's talking about Colt Cabana. He's not in a feud on television with Colt Cabana. He just beat Jon Moxley, but Okay. At one point, CM Punk mentions the EVPs and he says they couldn't manage a target. And I guess one of them, like the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, are EVPs of AEW. And one of them apparently said that Punk had something to do with the firing of Colt Cabana from AEW and pushed him into Ring of Honor or whatever. I don't know. But it's something that was supposedly claimed by someone. And so Punk is here refuting that fact that he had nothing to do with Colt Cabana getting moved from AEW to Ring of Honor. He doesn't care where Colt Cabana works. He has nothing to do with Colt Cabana. And boy, Tony Khan agreed with that point, because when he mentioned the EVPs not being able to manage a target, he was like, whoa, he was shocked that CM Punk said that. And then he's like, I have nothing to do with Colt Cabana and anything that happened to him. And then Tony Khan's like nodding his head like, yeah, that's true. CM Punk name checks Hangman Adam Page, and he's talking about an incident when Adam Page was in the ring with CM Punk doing a promo segment, and he mentioned something about CM Punk, you claim to be all about workers' rights, and that's false or something. I forget the exact quote, but apparently that was not agreed to beforehand to say anything like that, and Punk took that personally because he feels like he's taking a shot at him about the whole Colt Cabana situation, and he felt like Adam Page went into business for himself, and so he's talking about that now. And and then Tony Khan says to Nick Hausman that he shouldn't have said no comment, because that's why it seems like Punk had something to do with Cabana's movement to Ring of Honor, because apparently Tony Khan had been asked about CM Punk's involvement with whatever happened to Colt Cabana, and Tony didn't address it, and Tony felt he should have. Punk says that it's not Tony's responsibility to make things clear about this subject. Anyway, again, keep in mind, a successful pay-per-view just ended. Punk is the world champion, and they're talking about Colt Cabana. They're talking about the EVPs, not in a storyline sense. He's talking about the EVPs from real-life stuff that's been going on, and this is amazing. And at one point, he's like, what did I do for Hangman Adam Page to go into business for himself and say that to me on national television? Dave, what did I do? He's talking to Dave Meltzer, who is the head of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And then Dave says, I don't know, you tell me. This whole thing is a circus, and I love it. I was so entertained by this when this was going on. So Nick Hausman finally asks his question after all of this. And the question is about MJF, who made a big return at the pay-per-view. And he's asking Tony Khan, what do you guys think about MJF and the time he spent away, and why did he come back? And Tony Khan starts to answer the question. He's like, well, MJF's a big star, and for the fans, we wanted to bring him back. And then CM Punk interrupts and says, yeah, it's because he wants me to work with pricks all the time. He's talking about MJF now. So now he's taking shots at Colt Cabana, the EVPs, Hangman Adam Page, MJF, which, by the way, as I'm watching this, I was thinking, oh, he's setting up all the feuds that he's going to have down the line with this championship run. That's when I started to think, oh, is this sort of like a worked shoot thing? Because AEW has done a lot of these worked shoot things, which, by the way, I hate, because AEW does it too much, just like TNA used to do it too much, just like WCW used to do it too much. You can do a worked shoot once in a while and it'll work. For example, CM Punk's pipe bomb in 2011 in the WWE. That worked because you didn't hear stuff like that on WWE television every week. Now in AEW, we hear stuff like this every week on TV, on Twitter, and there's fake stuff and real stuff, but the one common thread is that people are not happy in AEW. That's the one common thread. So as I'm watching this, I thought this was like, oh, setting up feuds, but man, he's being really mean about it, and he's referencing real life stuff. Man, but he had not one good word to say about a whole bunch of these guys. And when he called MJF a prick, Tony Khan was, again, he was like, he's just, you could see how bothered he is by it. And then Punk goes back to talking about Colt Cabana again. That subject was over, but he brought it up again because he was like, I just want to say I tried mediation. I wanted to talk to him. Everything was denied. I offered him money. He said no. And he was again trying to defend himself against all this animosity that's been directed towards him over Colt Cabana. As this press conference is going on, there are certain points where you think that, okay, everything's okay now. You know, there were some sore spots early on, but, you know, everything's fine. One of those moments was when CM Punk picks up a muffin that he's eating, and he's like, oh, this is from Mindy's Bakery in Chicago. They're closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. He just randomly says that. He also says that he also apologizes for what he did. He says, like, I'm sorry, I'm old, I'm hurt. And it's hilarious. And then another reporter asked about MJF and asking about the positive reaction that MJF got from returning in Chicago at the pay-per-view. And Tony Khan's just saying, well, you know, MJF's a big star, even though he's a heel, you know, people cheer people when they come back, and he's not worried about what'll happen between MJF and CM Punk in terms of who gets cheered and who gets booed, because, you know, it's professional wrestling and fans can cheer whoever they want. And then after he says that, CM Punk once again goes back to the EVP thing. And he says they tried to middle their top babyface, meaning they tried to make their top guy who is responsible for selling out whatever arena that was, and getting their first $1 million gate for AEW. And Punk mentioned that they were jeopardizing it by making whatever comments so that the internet fans wouldn't like Punk. But it's funny, he's bringing it up again. So we're not out of the woods yet. The next reporter asks a question about all of the legends that AEW has, the coaches, the people they have backstage to help the younger talent in terms of improving their performances on camera and things like that. And then CM Punk once again goes back to Adam Page, who apparently said in an interview that, oh, I don't really take advice, or I don't really need advice. And he called Adam Page empty-headed. And he said this locker room isn't worth shit. When you have somebody going and saying something like that he doesn't need advice or he doesn't take advice. Whew, we're not even like halfway through this thing, and this is amazing. Punk gets asked a few more questions, and he gives more reasonable responses. He gets asked about Jon Moxley, Adam Cole, and he mentions some good stuff about them. At the end of the press conference, he says he's a little mad at Brian Alvarez because apparently Brian Alvarez had a video where he said that he was incredulous that Punk came out on TV and took a shot at Hangman Adam Page, calling him out when he knew Adam Page wasn't there, and how that, you know, whatever. And that's how the press conference ended. And Punk at the end says, just remember, we're human beings. I mean, that's a good summary of what took place during this press conference. But it was only shortly after that there was a physical confrontation between apparently members of the Elite, I believe the Young Bucks, and CM Punk and CM Punk's trainer, Ace Steel. And boy, you know, that is probably the greatest press conference I've ever seen from a pro wrestler. And it'll go down in history. I mean, there was articles written about it. Countless people talked about it. Seth Rollins called CM Punk a cancer because of that and the incident that happened afterwards, and maybe other reasons too. People took sides between Punk and the Elite, and it was just one big mess. And Punk has yet to return to AEW television. I hope he does return, because he is the biggest needle mover in that company, and AEW's ratings are kind of stagnant right now. Their pay-per-view buys are stagnant and kind of on a downward trend. And CM Punk can do a lot for the business, and it would also be good to see CM Punk work with some of those people he named, because, you know, people get mad at coworkers all the time and people have personal issues with them, but you got to work with them anyway, right? Well, we'll see what happens, because if CM Punk never returns to AEW, boy, that is a tragedy for that company.